All right, welcome back in a Live Now from Fox. I'm Austin Westfall, a live look at the U.S. Capitol on this Sunday. Happy Sunday edition to everybody watching. Filling in for Andy Mack today. My thanks to Stephanie Quinu, who's guided you through the past few hours of news. I'll be up here for the next 4 hours, rounding out the day. A couple live looks at the White House. I gotta say, I'm looking at something on my screen that I don't normally see. This is our normal look at the White House. Very cool. A slightly different view of the White House. Looks like this one has a better look of the 3 flags planted. Just a little thing I'm noticing as I'm coming back on the air for, as I mentioned, a busy news day. Live look at New York City on this Sunday as well. It's approaching 4 p.m. in the Big Apple and in the nation's capital. We are going to be discussing a slew of stories starting in Texas. Let's get the latest on recovery efforts there. We do have some good news from Texas officials that we got in last night. They say that the number of missing people related to the deadly floods dropped from more than 160 people to just 3 in Kerr County. It's after many people were confirmed safe. Retired Marine Intelligence Officer Hal Kempfer is here. Hal has extensive training in disaster preparedness and response. Hal, this is a story that you and I have been discussing ever since it happened. We just saw a drop from 160 missing to 3 people missing. What happened to the people that are safe now, but have been classified as missing up until now? Are these likely people who were simply displaced and it took some time to confirm their whereabouts?
Austin, usually with these things, and we saw the same thing in the Lahaina fire, if you remember, over in Maui. They had a huge amount. I think it was like 1,000 people were missing at one point. It's a huge number. And then it really dropped down fast over a period of months. And that's the same thing here we're seeing over a period of weeks. It's dropping down. And what it is they start going through, first off, it's summertime in this case. So you got a lot of people are on vacation, they're gone, whatever. There was a lot of people up there who are, tourists that don't live there. And hence, there's not a lot of great records. In fact, if there are records, if they checked into a campground by the river, they may not be able to find those records if they were there. So, basically, they list them as missing because they just don't know. They're not quite sure where they are. And what happens is, as people return home, as people make contact with others, as what's been happening, and this is what they kind of alluded to, is a lot of, dare I say, investigative effort happening on the side. While we're looking at this, they're going through these roles constantly to see if they can identify where these people are or anything. Tragically, in some cases, those who are missing actually get moved to the column where they do find the remains, and that accounts for some. But in most cases here, what looks like is a preponderance of it is they just simply were able to identify where these people were, and we're able to take them off that list. And that is a critical thing you have to do in emergency management is you have to work that investigative side to try and clear those lists. Otherwise, you could have people out there for an extended period of time looking for remains of people who are simply not dead. They just went on vacation or they went someplace and their neighbors or friends didn't know where they were, and they've been found.
So how does the number of missing drop so shortly, or so sharply, I should say? Is it likely that they've been slowly chipping away at that number for some weeks, but they didn't want to give a full updated number until they checked on everyone?
And they were getting people off the roster, and they finally said, okay, let's go ahead and put out a new list. That sounds to me more probable. There is another side of this. Sometimes there'll be folks in the category that were, like a large number of people who they made some sort of administrative, I'm not going to say error, but they'd made some sort of administrative assumption going into it to categorize them as missing, even though they may have said, look, they're probably not missing, but we're going to treat them as missing until we've absolutely proved otherwise. And then something suddenly changes and boom, a whole bunch of folks fall off the list because you're able to take them off. That's another scenario that could have taken place. And really it's not, what you see is you see people, meticulously going through brush, and through the rubble, the debris, and everything else. That's the part that people see. What they don't see is people going through lists, making phone calls, checking social media, doing all sorts of stuff to try and figure out if any of these individuals were wrongfully or mistakenly put on that list, or in an abundance of caution put on that list. And that's what's been happening behind the scenes, and it just drops it immensely. But here's the thing: when these disasters occur, whether it's a fire, a flood, an earthquake, whatever, you don't want to rush to take people off that list if they're actually trapped. I mean, one of the most gut wrenching things ever is that you think somebody is out there who isn't, who is actually trapped, and we stop looking for them. And that has happened enough times that they tend to be a very conservative before they take someone off the list, or before they announce a big change in that. Now, what will happen is, dropping from 160, I think the last count I saw was 103, they dropped down to 3. What that will do is that will trigger some decisions on how many resources are going to apply to the continued search and recovery effort. And that's one of the reasons they may have held back, because they wanted to, keep those resources in place as long as possible, doing the amount of work. But now we're down to numbers so small. When you look at the numbers of people that were lost or killed in this, the numbers are so small that we might be getting down to that point where some of those who are missing, who may be, deceased and lost in the debris, it may take a very long time. And in some cases, and this is tragic, happens a lot of times in flash floods, we may never find the remains because of all the debris that's covering them up.
We're seeing on screen here an update from Fox 4 Dallas. They say that a 16-member search and rescue team from the Czech Republic was among the groups that came to Texas to help with search and rescue efforts in Kerr County. Some of the best of humanity that we see during times like this, Hal. Lots of people coming. I remember the story, too, of the firefighters from Mexico that came to help with the recovery efforts as well. As of today, Hal, the death toll in Kerr County specifically stands at 107. That includes, sadly, 70 adults and 37 children. 3 people, as we've been alluding to, are still missing. Over 1,000 local, state, federal, and international personnel, alongside thousands of volunteers from across the globe, they're continuing to comb the area on foot, from the river's headwaters to Canyon Lake. The recovery efforts in Texas are entering a 3rd week now, Hal. It's a huge undertaking. How long of a process is this going to be?
It's going to go for quite a while. I think we've moved beyond search and rescue. Nobody's assuming that anybody who was caught in that flash flood has actually survived at this point. It's been weeks. There's just physiologically impossible. So it's a recovery effort across the board. And what you'll see over time is they're going to clear a number of zones, these gridded off areas. They're going to go through meticulously, going through that. They're running the dogs through there to see if they can sniff out any remains and stuff like that. And then they're going to get to a point where they're just going to kind of pull back resources further and further. And then there's that thing you're going to hear, which everyone hates to hear when there's still anybody unaccounted for, which is they're going to have to say, we're going to have to shut it down. And that's going to come at some point. I don't think it's going to come real soon. I think there's so much global attention on this. It's still phenomenal attention within Texas, that they'll keep this going for for a while longer. I would say weeks. I don't know about months, but I would say weeks, that they're going to keep looking until they've accounted. They want to find those 3 missing individuals that are still out there. So they're going to keep looking until either they find all 3, or it's just to a point where they've run out of places to look, and they're going to have to assume that the remains are buried. And I do mean that buried under the debris field, under the ground. You have to remember, when these flash floods come, it's not only trees and buildings and everything else that get washed downstream. It's a tremendous amount of alluvial flow. It's rock and sand and dirt that gets moved downstream. So when people get caught in that underwater, they can actually be buried under that stuff, and it makes it very, very difficult, as you can imagine, once the waters recede, to find where those individuals are, because they could be under literally feet of hard packed dirt, gravel, debris, and that's kind of where they're getting down to. It's a horrible thing, but it's just the nature of that type of disaster.
And we will continue to look for updates about the 3 outstanding people who continue to be missing. Hal is going to hang with us. We have 2 more stories that we want to hit with him. We have to take a commercial break first. Before we do that, though, Greg Abbott saying thanks to Governor Katie Hobbs for sending a voluntary agency liaison and report aerial equipment crew support team to support our flood response and recovery efforts. Thank you to our fellow Americans for having our back. A Republican governor saying thank you to a Democratic governor during these challenging times. Let's take a commercial break. Lots more to discuss with Hal when we return.